So good afternoon. I'm here with AT Lightheart for the Awesome Health podcast. And I'm so excited about today's show because I've got one of my good friends and mentors, a guy that inspired me. In fact, was the founder of the Cory Holly Institute. His name is Cory Holly, and that's the Chi Institute for those of you who want the abbreviation. And Cory will talk about that. But what a lot of people don't know is I've got a certification from this institute. And even though I had gone to university for 4 years and studied with a bunch of people, I found that Cory Holly's information was more practical, it was more applicable, and it was so easy to access through his course. He's a living legend in Canada. He's been so many different things. I mean, you go through your bio, it's like several pages. You've been on 6 continents. You've traveled the world. Tell me, who is Cory Holly in your own words and some of your accomplishments? So that was the time to toot your horn, buddy. Great to have you here.
It's wonderful to be here, and I'm very pleased to be on your show. Well, just recently, I went on a trip with my son, Michael, and he's 32, and we don't get to spend very much time together alone. He's very busy. He's an IT engineer. So we decided to fly to Las Vegas, and we enjoyed that for a night, but then we stole away, rented a car, and we went to the Grand Canyon. We went to Monument Valley. We went to Zion Canyon. And through this process, and this is how I'm going to answer your question, he said, "Dad, who are you? What makes you tick? What are you all about?" And I said, "Well, you tell me, Mike." He says, "Well, Dad, I think that ultimately, outside of all the fanfare, you're just a basic gym rat. That's what you are." And I said, "You nailed me to a T. I am a gym rat." And guess who else was the first gym rat known on this planet with any notoriety? Aristotle, perhaps the most intelligent man that ever lived. The guy that invented zoology, who's the father of logic, who created his own university, after being taught by Plato, who was taught by Socrates. What a lineage. Okay, so I added to that, I said, well, you got to add in the fact that I'm a hippie, a true hippie. Make love, not war, because I detest violence in any form. And then we talked about passivity and how you avoid conflict and what you do when you have to encounter a situation that's going to lead to conflict. And of course, we're getting into philosophy, and this is what I love, because I think first and foremost, a man's got to have a philosophy. He's got to define not who he is, and this is what I'm telling you now. I was stuck on that for a long time. Who am I? Who am I? Like Arnold has a whole thing on it. Who are you? Who am I? Right? Well, Aristotle said, forget who you are. It's obvious. You're you. The guy standing in front of the mirror, that's who you are. You're unique, like a snowflake. But the most important question, or maybe the two, is next. Where are you? Like, when you start answering that question, you have to get into a scientific mode. Where am I? I'm on a planet. What is it doing? Where is it in the universe? What is the universe? Okay, so where am I? And what is existence? And when you come to terms with that kind of stuff, you really start to get in touch with what I call reality. And then Einstein said, if you want to know the truth, study nature. It's not about faith. It's about scientific fact. And so this is what has motivated me, so much. I want to know where I am and what I'm doing and what the options are. And then ultimately what I decided and discovered a long time ago, Wade, and you know this too, is that in order to achieve anything that I have in mind, no matter what it is, whether it be an astronaut or a deep sea diver or an explorer or an IT engineer, no matter what I want to do, I have to be well, always. That is the overriding principle of everything. That is my destiny. That is my birthright. That is what nature designed in me. And so what I see around me are a lot of people that are not experiencing emotional, mental, and physical wellness. And there's a reason that they are not. And so by studying, first of all, you can go to a gym and see how not to do everything. Just go to any gym and watch people train. Okay, that's how not to do it. So in your investigation of trying to figure things out, one of the great lessons that you can learn what to do is by learning what not to do. And we're surrounded by a lot of stuff going on that is corrupt and harmful, of course, the first rule in natural medicine is do no harm. And I love that. I love that about naturopathic functional medicine, do no harm, because I love sport. I just dig it so much. But in my sport experience, I strive to be a great sportsman, a man of honor, a man of integrity, and a man of courage. Hence, CHI, cheat. So I think the final addition to the question that my son asked me, and I'll finish off with this. I'm a surf bum. I have been a resident of Hawaii. My daughter was born there. I went there to find my nirvana, my place of perfection. And of course, it's not. There's a dark side to Hawaii. But for the most part, if you get into the nature, this is what the Hawaiians love, and that true aloha spirit, which is what I dig. And get into the waves, and you get out there in the waves, and you start to learn how you tie in with what it is you have no control over. So you submit to the wave. You never stand up against the wave. You either ride it or you duck under it. But when you ride it, when you catch a ride, and this is how I relate to life. When you catch a ride, there's nothing like it. It's timeless, you're weightless, you're ageless, it's incredible. And every time I catch a ride, I come crashing up after I hit the dirt or the sand, and I can't stop laughing. It's just such a wonderful experience. So I want to have fun. I want to enjoy life. And I can't see how I can enjoy my life if I'm not absolutely, totally well and fulfilling my potential, strength, performance, endurance, stamina, flexibility, aerobic capacity. This is everything that embodies being human and, of course, making progress. So that's who I am.
I love it. It's the contrarian physical philosopher who lives his creed. For those of you who don't know and are not able to watch the video, Cory and I actually competed together in a bodybuilding contest way back in 2007 and had an opportunity to represent our country together. Cory is a physical specimen, so you can't fake what you've accomplished. And your physical vitality is evidence. You carry an incredible amount of muscle mass, and you're also athletic. And if you don't mind, would you mind sharing your age and then how you got there? Would that be all right for us?
No, I'm overjoyed by my age. I embrace it, and this is the thing that a lot of people struggle with: is reality itself. Age is a big one, especially for women. Okay, so if you come to terms with reality, you embrace that which is, and anything else, anything that you can't change, you don't waste any time sulking over or bitching about. Okay, like the weather, for example. Okay, if you don't like it, like in Vancouver because it rains, move. Otherwise, shut up. Okay, and go out and go for a run or something. So I'm 59. I'll be 60 in October, and I'm experiencing now in Masters track and field, which begins at 40. Actually, they changed it now. It's 35. Okay. I'm a hammer thrower, and I love the hammer because it's very intense and it's very difficult. And between throws, you have a very laid back rest pause. It's kind of like training in the gym, and you're hitting the squats or deadlift. You don't time a 30-second rest pause between 500-pound deadlifts. You take 3, 4, 5 minutes if you're a power lifter. I like power. I like the load, because it forces me to come to terms with my potential, and that's what builds strength and remodels the body in the way that we can have control over. There's some things you can control, and by all means, I think that we need to know what they are. So in Masters Track and Field, there is a category that begins at age 50, and 59 is the last age bracket. Next year, I go to 60. Now, my goal this year is to set a new record in my age group. And that motivates me to do the skill training, to show up. And that is why I love being the age that I am, because at this age, I have a certain amount of experience and know-how and insight. I don't get upset about a lot of things that maybe I might have in the past. My expectations of the world and people and young people especially have changed. I realize my strengths and limitations. I'm not religious at all. Zero. I have no faith in anything except fact. Okay? So I came from nothing and I'm going to nothing, and I'm incredibly happy about knowing that. So the whole trip is about now. So I don't spend a lot of time thinking about the past other than the joyful moments, but I don't look back with regret. I look forward to awesome opportunity, things I want to create, because that's the nature of a human, to create, to produce, to, if you can ultimately, like you and I are experiencing this, to actually get involved in something that you create and generate revenue in a world that can't seem to get around the whole issue of money, being a slave to it, and not understanding that that's not our purpose. That's not what drives a human. We are designed to create, to grow, to learn, to philosophize, to be athletic, to hunt, to gather, to do a lot of great stuff. And in the modern world, we've got so much opportunity. So I love going to these competitions and seeing 70 and 80 and 90-year-olds. I mean, the world record for a 100-year-old has been set. Can you imagine being in track and field at 100 years old and throwing the hammer and showing up and doing the work? I just thrilled by that idea.
I love it as well. And I think there's so many people at your age that are making excuses or exceptions for physicality. And you're setting athletic goals in track and field. For people who are listening and going down a possibility, how is it that you've gotten to this place? What has been your journey physically and nutrition-wise? What are some lessons that you've learned along the way that you can pass on to people if they want to produce the kind of health and vibrancy that you carry?
Well, the biggest lesson of all that I've learned to this date is that I learned how to reject all of the that was fed into my brain as a kid.
Some of that, can you dive in on that?
Okay, yeah. So the conventional education system did not prepare me for reality. It did not teach me the things I needed to know. The greatest thing that's lacking in it is that when I graduated from high school, I wasn't equipped with the knowledge of how to look after myself. From a fundamental cellular point of view, with prevention medicine dominating my consciousness, okay? Health consciousness is not what you see in a high school graduate, okay? They don't know how to eat. What they think what they call food, I would call slop, and I wouldn't feed it to an animal. So they don't understand nutrition science, biochemistry. You ask the average high school graduate, I want you to design an exercise program for yourself right now, and let's go for a tour in the gym, and I want you to tell me what every exercise does and how it works, and a rep and a set and how it all, what exercise. Okay, so that's absolutely critical, because you can't be well in this world of machines. People are afraid to walk. We drive cars, we fly in airplanes, we go on buses, we're not moving. So that has to be incorporated. I mean, you can find all of this data out. I've been dedicated to the education of people like yourself and others to really get charged and motivated about doing what needs to be done to be well. So I bought into the mainstream idea of being an employee. And I did not see myself as the entrepreneur that I truly am. I had to discover that by being greatly disappointed and betrayed by the system and being mistreated and abused by many, many employers. Okay. And at the end of the day, thinking, is this all there is? From working in Greece, because I've traveled a lot, pounding rocks on a beach for 50 drachma, which is like 25 cents or whatever it was back there in the 80s. And I'm thinking, okay, these people have been doing this like a chain gang for 20 years. Is this how I want to live my life? No. But I will do it today because I need to eat. But I realized by doing this that this is not what I want to do. Not knowing what I wanted to do at that time. What it was I was designed to do. What it was that I was going to discover about myself. So I knew absolutely, because I've always loved sport, that this was part of the answer for me. And that tied in with sport and choosing a sport that you love. And from that, I sort of came up with this idea about sport type. The reason people are attracted to specific sports is because they're very much like who and what you are. That's why you love them. We can get into that later maybe. But the gym would eventually, at the age of 12, that's when I started to train. That's when I got the dynamic tension course from the back of a Superman comic and learned how to push and pull against immovable objects. Okay. And then eventually I would learn by reading muscle magazines about Arnold and Joe Weider, and then I would start lifting dumbbells. And then eventually, and you know this, the secret of steel. You know, what is the power of the sword compared to the hand that wields it, right?
Conan, the riddle of steel. You
Absolutely.
know what it is, don't you?
You must learn its puzzle. So then along the way, like there's so much I could say here, that the lessons that I've learned, the primary ones. Okay, you got to do what you love in this life, because after this life is over, that's it. You disappear, you vaporize, there's nothing left. And just think of this. Who do you know that was living 500 years ago? Do you know anything about them? Okay, now you might know Achilles or Aristotle, but you don't know the person, and you know of them only because of what was written. Their lives, their feelings, their fears, their essence is gone. We can only speculate as to who and what they were. So everything that you are, that you feel, that you think's important, eventually when you're gone, everyone that knows you or knew you, when they're gone, eventually take it another generation, no one will know that you existed. Mm-hmm. Okay, so that's really how you fit into the scheme of things. Because just look back at, I asked this question the other day. My son and I were talking, how many people do you think have ever lived? What's the estimation? And the answer is 100 billion. That's what the statisticians have come up with. So 100 billion people have been alive and lived on this planet, and we don't know anything about them. We know that they existed, but that's all. And that's all it will be too. So you have got to find the point for all of this yourself. And if you buy into some guru, to some book, to some bizarre, non-scientific, ridiculous concept that you think is real, without using facts and science and evidence to sustain it, to validate it, it's possible that you could wake up one day and find out that you've been wasting your entire life. I don't care what you do. I'm not going to judge people for what they do, because I believe in freedom. But I think that ultimately, because my son has a daughter, and I said, what is more important than the health of your daughter? You're lucky, Michael. Your daughter has never been sick. She's never been in the hospital. You haven't been frightened, as many parents would be, at the possible loss of her life. You've never experienced that. Ultimately, everything that you think matters, or that many people believe matters, will just move away out of the horizon when someone you love is incredibly sick or ill and on the verge of death and their own demise. And then you realize this is what it's all about. Life, friendship, love, beauty, the things that we somehow lose touch with because we are running like hamsters on the wheel. We have no free time or not enough of it. The other thing too is that I was raised by, parents who knew nothing about nutrition, and they bought into the BS that was, told to them by the government, the food guide. And so I was eating sugar, Cheerios, Pop-Tarts, chocolate bars, pop, garbage. And I was playing outside in my home. And there's a ravine right where I lived, a ditch. And we were playing, and it was filled with water. And we were trying to push each other in and just being stupid guys. We were like 16, 17 actually. And I slipped and fell in. And lo and behold, there was this book that I picked up. And the book was called Are You Confused? It was written by Dr. Pavel Arola. Wow. Who was a naturopath. And I didn't know what the word meant, because I had absolutely zero knowledge of nutrition other than you eat food if it tastes good. You stuff it in. And man, I had a reputation of eating so much food. Now, I was incredibly active. I used to carry 10 hockey sticks to school so that I could share them with my friends before school started in the gym and play ball hockey. I would skip out of classes, and I for it all the time, and I would go in other PE classes. I played every sport imaginable. I was athlete of the year in junior high. I was athlete of the year in senior high, got a scholarship, went to university, track and field, wrestling, football. Then I realized that, conventional education meant next to nothing compared to some of the finer things. I wanted to travel. That's what I really wanted to do. So I bought a one-way ticket back then to Bangkok, and I came back a year later after going to places that blew my mind, opened up my paradigm, and I began to see this connection that as people moved away from nature, and as they became more materialistic, and as they began to eat more and more refined, processed, dead food, they lost the most important thing to me, which is health, functional health, mental health, emotional health. Now, I'm privileged to have watched the original series of Star Trek on TV. I think I was about 8 years old at the time, in the middle 60s. And I fell in love with Spock. Okay, there's a man that I really like because he controls himself. Now, that is something I've always been attracted to, a man who has self-control. And this ties in with Aristotle, who I would later get to know because I've read the complete works of all these philosophers. And he said that you'll never be a master, Cory. It's like he's speaking to me. You'll never be a master unless you learn how to control your emotions. He said, so here's the approach. You just study emotions like a rock. What are they? Where do they come from? How are they produced? Most people have never done this. And they're slaves to their emotions, and they make all kinds of decisions in life or get involved in all kinds of situations and with people for emotional reasons only without using logic, like Spock does. And he saves the Enterprise 97% of the time. So I'm not saying that emotions are bad. I'm just saying we need to learn how to control them. And that if you harness your positive emotions, and that's what excites me. I get excited about certain things, about sport and activity and love and children and my grandkids now and travel. Love it, love it, love it. But there's a lot of things I will not do because they are illogical, or a lot of people I won't get involved with because I know that I'm going to get myself in trouble because these people mean trouble. So I am dedicated to one single cause, and that is wellness. That's what I exist for. That's what I put above everything, above money, above possession, above family, above everything is my personal health. Because if I go down literally and die, I can't experience family. I can't experience my children. I can't travel. I can't play sport. I can't do anything. So in simple terms, I need to learn, and this kind of encapsulates what I believe every man is obligated to do. Now, if you've never had children, you can't relate to this, but teaching a child how to wipe their rear end is one of the greatest challenges as a parent, especially for boys, because they do not want to do it. They want to crap their pants.
Right.
Okay? They don't want to brush their teeth. They just don't see any point to any of it.
Right.
Okay? So there's a lot of adults out there that can't wipe their rear end. And I mean that metaphorically. They do not know how to take care of themselves. They might have a PhD in physics. They might be a professor at Harvard. They might be the police chief in Chicago. It doesn't matter. Degrees mean nothing when it comes to self-management and self-care and self-respect. So if you're not, and this is what I believe our obligation as an individual sentient being is, as a free agent, as an expression of nature, because nobody owns us. We are obligated to know what the rules of the game are in this sport we call life. And if you want to be a good sportsman, you will play according to the rules. But how can you play according to the rules if you don't know what the rules are? Enter physics, biochemistry, biology. The rules of life are well described. And you don't have to be a professor to understand them. But if you disobey them, and this is what I learned from Pavel Orola, reading his material way back when I was 17. If you disobey these laws of health, Cory, you're never going to be able to experience the joy of playing sport that I know that you love today and always will. And that is what captivated my interest. He said, Cory, you have the worst diet I've ever seen. You're a great athlete. You love it. You do it for the right reasons. But if you keep eating this way, you're never going to make it to my age right now. So that's what caused me to change.
That's a great, almost like an intervention or something that, do you feel that there was an activation of fate, or was there something like, what bit you to make that decision? And at what point did you commit your life to not only learning these principles, but you share these principles through your institute and literally around the world?
Well, I think that a negative experience, I didn't have a father. So my surrogate father was my grandfather. And he died young at 69, which is relatively young. And I didn't understand why I was too young. Later, I would learn that he was a smoker. He was unhappily married. He was a workaholic. He did no exercise at all. And he liked to hit the bottle. Okay, so that explains that. But when you lose the man you love as a small child, it can really damage you. Plus, I already had to deal with the fact that my father bolted. I met him later in my life, but I never met him until I was 16. So I was so involved in sport, and then I realized too that sport became what I needed in my life to compensate for that vacuum in that hole. But I was a really good athlete. I was natural, as they say. I think that I was more motivated to do well than just being natural. But I love sport. It meant a lot to me. I found freedom in it. And I also discovered, because I had low self-esteem, which is often tied in with a man or a woman who is abandoned, right? You can't explain why your father would just leave you and not acknowledge your own existence. So a lot of athletes I've discovered too are really fouled up inside, and they also have an anger that is displaced in the sport. That's what drives them to achieve phenomenal performances. They're driven by anger. If you can capture that element without being angry, I think that's even better. But the experiences of life, in my own personal life, and everyone's got their own personal experiences, are what culminate to eventually help you make sense of it all. Okay, so the idea of being something more than everyone else. Now, I've got these like fictional characters that I look up to. I don't worship men. I worship myself. I guess you could say I really like myself. I don't elevate men above me. I believe we're all standing on the same plane. We're mortal. We have the same issues going on, the same challenges, more or less, But Howard Rourke is this character in the movie and the book called Fountainhead. I would discover Ayn Rand too eventually, and she would help me to really get in touch with my individuality. She said, Cory, you're not obligated to the state. You don't owe your life to anyone. You are a single agent, and you're entitled to decide what to do for yourself, for your own self-fulfillment. Okay? And that was wonderful. I just needed to hear this. But Howard Rourke, she uses in this depiction of a man who will not compromise his vision. He's an architect, and his plans are so outrageous and so bizarre and so beyond the scope of convention that he's rejected by everyone and told that he'll never succeed. Oh man, did I relate to that. Because I've been led to believe by a lot of people my whole life that I would never succeed. I would never achieve many things that I've done because I was a renegade. I was a disturber. I couldn't fit in. I never could fit in to almost everything around me. That was part of my struggle. So then I see this guy who will not sell out. He won't sell out for money. He won't sell out for fame or power or glory, nothing. He stays true to his single-minded ambition, which is to create what he believes is genuine and awesome. And so ultimately, he goes through what many people would think, would be a loss of notoriety and fame and money. But actually, he stayed true to himself, And you got to watch this movie because it blew me away when I first saw it. I watched the movie, then I read the book. At the end,
this is Ayn Rand's Atlas Shrugged.
Yeah. No, this is the Fountainhead.
Oh, you're right.
She wrote the Fountainhead before, and it became, she also was involved in converting it into a movie, and it stars Gary Cooper and Patricia Neal, 1949.
We'll put that in the show notes.
Yeah. Very, very good. It's just about someone who won't compromise the essence of their being for anything. They won't sell out. Now, that element, that characteristic is very attractive to me. I really admire that in a man or a woman. They won't sell out because they understand how ridiculous it is, how futile it would be to sell their soul for $1. Another great one is Dorian Gray, the picture of Dorian Gray, about a man who sells his soul for, immortality, and in the end becomes the very devil that he was afraid of becoming because of that, because he sold out. I love Superman because he was a moral man. He would do anything except kill the bad guys. He said, if I kill them, I'll become like them. So I was attracted morally, philosophically, to all kinds of individuals or situations. And then that ultimately would inspire me not to compromise, like the work that I've done to create the Institute, because I've had people that have tried to steal my course. I've been sued, and I would never give it up. I've been baited. I've been tempted. And it's almost like there's a great episode where Spock is made an offer from these people in a jail, like in a jail. They're trying to get out, and they try and tempt him with money, and he's so far beyond that. He just looks at them like, what a ridiculous thing you're trying to do. You're trying to tempt me with something as trivial as money? Now, I've been watching people my whole life, because one of the attributes of Aristotle that made him great was he was an incredible observer of things and people. And I used to sit on park benches and watch people in parks, and sit beside seniors at the age of 8 and ask them what life's all about and what they think is important.
Funny enough, I did the same thing. I used to go to the senior citizens home and talk to my older people and ask them about life when I was a small kid. I didn't know we share that.
Everybody's got a story, don't they?
They sure do.
Just take the time to listen.
And I remember, just to interject before I go on there, is I remember them saying to me, I said, what do I need to know as a young kid? And they said, life goes by so quickly, which is incomprehensible to these people who are as old as the hills. And here I was a young boy. And now I understand the wisdom of what they said.
Absolutely. And there's something called karma or divine recycling, cause and effect. That's Newtonian physics. Call it whatever you like. But if you hurt people, ultimately, if you live by the sword, you're going to die by it. So I'm not into harm. That's what I love about natural medicine. I'm into saving lives, saving people, or at least helping them save themselves, because I can't save anybody. Okay, nobody can save another person. You try getting in the way of a drug addict or an alcoholic. Just try getting in their way, and they'll find a way to get out of your way and go do it somewhere else. Okay? But what you can do is inspire people with love of self and the magnitude of your own life expression and acceptance. So rather than condemning and criticizing and judging, why not open up? One of the favorite things I love to do, is after having a little hit of a vaporizer, going outside and talking to homeless people and asking them and just talking to them, because there's a fair amount of them in Vernon. They're everywhere, right? And they're harmless. But man, I want to find out why they're there, what's in their mind, and learn from people, right? All the time, constantly looking to learn. Now, that doesn't get in the way of the fact that the gym is my anchor. That's what it is in my life. That's my rock. Okay, I just came from the gym before this interview, and I train 6 days a week. Now, in the track season, I throw on the field, do sprinting, plyometrics, and a lot of throws and a lot of drills. Okay, the next day I'm in the gym, and it's a 5-phase workout. I do a warm-up and then I do one body part, and then I do core training, and then I do HIIT, the high intensity interval training, and then I finish off with a really good long stretch, a full yoga stretch on the mat, right? That takes me an hour and a half. So if you use a fitness assessment to determine in people what their capacity is, what they utilize is muscle endurance, muscle strength, aerobic capacity, flexibility, and body composition. And of course, there's gait and blood pressure and other things too. So in the scientific sense, and the Greeks figured this out 2,000 years ago, 2,500. They knew all this stuff. A man is built from the dirt up first because he's made of the dirt. Okay, so they invented the Olympics. You build in a child the capacity to go through all of the obstacles that they will go through in sport and activity, like the Spartans, like in the movie 300. Okay, It's tough. And you build a kind of a toughness inside of you, but you can still be meek and mild and kind and compassionate and loving. You can be like a peaceful warrior. Okay, then the connection that would come later, the most important, I call it bridging the gap, is this thing about whole, natural, real food. And the science is what keeps me focused on that, because all of the evidence shows that our evolutionary past is based on being hunter-gatherers and eating nothing except natural, whole, real, fresh food. That's all there ever was, not for 20 years, not for 100 years, for millions of years. Okay, since the first hominid evolved into the predecessors that led to the production of the Homo sapiens. Okay, we're one of the great apes, right? That's what evolution teaches. And I'm into that. So my genes were created from an environment that demanded from me the highest level of physical performance and excellence. Otherwise, I couldn't survive. And all I could eat, there was no such thing as refined, processed, dead food. Nothing except real, natural food. Everything's organic on the whole planet. And there's lots of it. You say when the Europeans first came to North America, the rivers were so filled with fish in the lakes that you could throw an empty hook in it and catch something. I just came back from the Isle of Skye. That's my roots, at least part of it, okay? Right. Scotland. And I found the Dunvegan Castle that my ancestors from the MacLeod family used to rule for 500 years and stick their enemies' heads on stakes in front of. Well, right beside the castle is this inlet. And they said that each season they'd raise this flag. And of course, they lived on herring. That was one of their principal foods. Because I think that the healthiest people I've met in my travels all over the world are fishermen. Not commercial fishermen that don't even eat the fish they catch, but the actual cottage-style fishermen who go out because if they don't catch the fish, they'll die. And they bring it back and they feed their family. And everybody eats the fish. Essential fatty acids, high-quality protein. You eat everything. You know how good fish is. Clean fish. Well, there was so many herring that there was an overabundance. I mean, imagine how abundant this planet would be until recently, when technology used incorrectly has led to the destruction and the overfishing and the overutilization of everything through materialism and greed. There's no balance there. So this is my past. So what I'm trying to do in my life, and this makes sense to me, is that I want, because my genes, I'm stuck with them. I can't change them, but I can change how I bathe them, how I treat them. That's relative to my lifestyle. And the greatest thing with the genetics and epigenetics and nutrigenomics is that we now know that the idea of the past of genetic determinism has been destroyed by new evidence, and it's strong. It's so strong that it's that people hate it.
Like epigenetics, that you can actually turn off and on your genes, and that can activate super levels of potential, possibly, like Wim Hof, what he's done.
Absolutely. Right. Absolutely. That by conditioning, as the habitat goes, so go the inhabitants. So let's look at wild animals and compare them to zoo animals. I think that modern domesticated humans are just like zoo animals in cages. Okay? They're docile, they're apathetic, they're fat, They have no ambition for the most part. Of course, there's exceptions, but I just look at the collective, okay? And I don't want to be part of it. I want nothing to do with it, other than the fact that my own brother and sister and family might be part of it. I don't hate them, but I personally don't want to participate. Then I met Gandhi, and he said, if you want freedom, don't participate in the madness. Don't strike out. Don't hit people. Don't get violent. Just don't participate in the madness. So I don't. And at 17, I turned 180 degrees. Okay, not a full circle, but a half circle. Now, once I was in a health food store, and this doctor came in and said, "Who are you? What kind of a degree do you have?" And at that time, I just was beginning, didn't have a degree. Well, I had read something, and I played this game. He comes in, he's got this paunch on him. He's acting like an idiot. He's really arrogant, pretending as if the health industry is idiotic and stupid, that we don't know anything. So he says, "What kind of a degree?" I says, "I have 180 degrees." He looks at me and goes, "What? What are you talking about?" I said, "I met a man, a naturopath, who told me a story about life and living. And that motivated me to turn around 180 degrees. And ever since that day, I have never been in that same situation. I turned around and walked away in the other direction, from the direction that I was moving towards." This is fantastic news, because I just did an interview with Bruce Lipton, and we're getting into the neurology of epigenetics and how he says, "Cory, your genes are like an architectural drawing. They don't do anything. They have to be read. And your actions and thoughts are what lead to them being read and then activating them or not." So this is fantastic news today, is that no matter who you are, no matter where you're at, no matter what you've gone through, you can change, transform, and liberate yourself. It's exactly what I did. That's how I look at myself. I liberated myself from the thing that I was trying to be, but that's not who I really was. Who I really was before that time, before I was exposed to the wrong information and led to believe by the wrong people that that was the pursuit of excellence. Before that, I was a young person that was curious and in love with life, and I didn't want to hurt anybody, and I love sport, and that's exactly who I am today. It's just that I have a brain, and I have the capacity to create, and I've got 100 billion neurons with tracks that add up into the quadrillions. It's an amazing potential. It's like the universe that I live in. So knowing my potential and having an interest in learning about life and myself, because it's all self-directed, I want to experience the best possible life. And Stephen Hawking helped me understand what that was. He said there's two words that will describe the best possible life: simplicity and elegance. And so I live here in Vernon. I don't have a car. I got rid of that 10 years ago. Do I get around? Damn well rights I get around. We take taxis. I fly in airplanes and take buses, but I walk. I like that. Trace and I both like that European lifestyle. So I walk to the gym, 2 kilometers there, 2 kilometers back. And on the way there, I jump over ditches. I go up hills. I use my brain like a little kid, and I put my music on and I have fun. It's all about having fun. We walk to the markets. Chase and I have been all through Europe, and this is how the Europeans live, many of them. And they're not poor people in the sense of internal riches. They're beautiful people. They're happy people, much happier in many ways than people I see who never walk. And walking, in football, I learned this lesson. Cory, go walk it off. You get a Charlie horse. Go walk it off, they said. And then later on, being married, I learned that Trace and I might have an argument. And so one of the habits of unraveling that challenge of miscommunication is that we both walk out the door and go around the block in opposite ways and start walking. And then when we crossed each other's path on the other side, by then we'd start coming towards each other. We'd always end up laughing. Mm-hmm. We were literally walking off the steam, not punching and screaming and yelling, but walking it off. This to me is absolutely fundamental and crucial to the existence of a human. You see these Indians, depicted incorrectly I think that they were incredible examples of physical beauty and specimens, living off the land entirely, hunting, living on buffalo. What kind of a diet is that? It's a perfect bodybuilding diet. And you got to hunt it and get it and do everything physical. Imagine the kind of shape they were in. Nothing like how they're depicted in the Hollywood movies. So I believe our heritage is given to us incorrectly. I think that in many ways we've lost touch with many of the elements that make humans great. And yet I do and really like technology. I like space travel. I like the idea of machines doing all the menial tasks in the future and having the time that we need as humans to meet, like Aristotle in the Lyceum. He was the first to have a school and a gym in Athens. Plato's academy was not in a gym, and Plato said that the form of the good was the true life, and Aristotle said, What form of the good? What are you talking about? There's no form of the good. So he was the materialist and realist that I've become. Okay, and that's made me a lot happier. It really irons out a lot of the mystery of life. There is mystery. I just watched the latest Star Trek Beyond, and Chris Pine, who stars as the new Captain Kirk, says a great thing. He says, there is nothing unknown, only that which is temporarily hidden. Mm-hmm. So I don't, Bertrand Russell said, believe in what is, don't believe in what isn't, and everything else, suspend judgment. It's just a beautiful paradigm. So, if you ask me the rotational speed of the earth or the escape velocity, I can answer these questions. The speed of sound, the speed of light. Now, knowing these mathematical constants has given me incredible self-confidence about myself and what I am and in the world that I live in. And there's less mystery. And it's very difficult. It would be almost impossible for someone to con me when it comes to trying to persuade me to believe in something that isn't real, that they think is real. And then when I say, well, what evidence do you have? So this is why I love, how do we know that magnesium, a very important element, vanadium, iron, chromium, how do we know these things exist? It's only because of science, microscopes, telescopes, technology. We just learned about vitamins recently. Before that, we had no idea that these things that are impossible to see with the naked eye even exist. And now we know that millions died because of their insufficient provision or deficiency. And still today, we're suffering with malnutrition because of the consumption of mass quantities of empty food, like sugar and white flour, for example. So the bridge I was talking about, you commit yourself to a lifelong pattern of sport, movement, exercise. That's a given, and it's scientifically built. It's not the same as mowing the lawn or working as a waitress. I can take any waitress or any bricklayer who I've worked around. I can put them in a gym for 6 months and make them stronger and fitter in every way. And so you don't use as an excuse the fact that if you're one of those few remaining people that do physically work, you can't say, well, I'm in the best possible shape that I'm in. No, I can prove to you that I can make you live longer and feel better by going to the gym. I used to be a meat cutter and work heavy and pick up these huge sides of beef on the bandsaw and cut them in half. It was heavy, heavy work, and I worked 10-hour shifts. I'd go to the gym after for 2 or 3 hours. I was in my mid-20s. No steroids. And I was eating red meat all day long as a butcher, getting that creatine. I didn't even know about it then. Getting that B12, getting that carnitine and that carnosine, all the things that we now know make athletes super strong and powerful that people can take, even if they're vegans. They can take them as supplements. So, all of this culminates into an experience which is mine and mine alone. And then ultimately, I join hands. And this is what I'm teaching now through the school and to my students. So you have to understand the importance of both fitness and nutrition as a science, to incorporate them into a joyful experience, into an experience where you actually shop for your own food and make your own food. You learn to enjoy, you have appreciation for the life that it gives you in return for what you give. And ultimately, then you can then share that. But, one of the great things about my life right now, I've got 4 grandkids, and I am teaching them lessons, and it's all physical. I take them to the park, and it's all about movement and having fun. And Grandpa, why is the sky blue? And being able to answer those questions, it's just fantastic. So the good life is not what we've been led to believe, I think. At least it wasn't true for me. Learning how to delay gratification so that you can't consume any amount of anything without suffering as a consequence. You have to learn how to pattern yourself. You have to want to do that. And the struggle with self, to me, is a futile waste of time. But so many people do it. They have not really got in touch with who and what they are.
So if I was to summarize our first part of the interview here, because there's a lot of philosophical gold here that you're laying down, so it's fun stuff. Number one, you need to develop some form of philosophy. Number two, you've got to incorporate movement, fitness. Number three, you've got to be able to figure out the kind of food that supports physical vitality so that you can live your philosophy, if you will.
Absolutely.
Right. You got to find out how to not waste time, because you're a prolific guy and you produce a lot of value in the world. And obviously that's because you've figured out how not to waste time on things that you can't control. And that maybe tie into physiology. So where I'm leading on this is, what are, you've been doing this now for 5 decades or plus at a very high level. What are the basic tenets of living a healthy lifestyle? Like just simple framework or bullets that are just non-negotiables to someone that's saying, Cory Holly, what are the 5 things, the 3 things, the 10 things that I must do if I want to realize my physical potential?
As a reference, I'll use Tom Hanks and the movie Castaway. And so he washes up on this island. Have you seen the movie?
Yeah, I love the movie. It's great.
Okay. So what is it that he needs? Now, the air is available. He's got air, but we all need clean air. And that's what I rank as being number 1, because in terms of what is obvious, okay, he's got air. Number 2, what's more important than food? What will you die of if you don't get enough of sooner than if you don't get food?
Water.
Exactly. So how does he figure it out? He can't drink seawater, although now they're using nanotechnology and we're going to be able to harvest fresh water from the sea to provide endless amounts of fresh water all over the world. He doesn't have that technology. Coconut. Okay, he picks up a coconut inside there. That's the cleanest water in the entire world. The water inside of an organic orange or peach is the cleanest water in the world. It's the best natural distillation factory in the world, nature. Okay. Now, I've been to Cairns, Australia, and pockets of pure environments in South America and the Himalayas and all over the world. And you want to get some nice, clean mountain water. Oh, that's good water, man. It's vital. It's active. You know lots about water. You've written about water. Okay. It's mineral rich. It's hard. It's what makes cows in Switzerland, produce twice the amount of milk as compared to animals that don't. So that, I think, is enormously important. I drink 3 or 4 liters a day, and I have a formula, 30 milliliters per kilogram of lean mass. It's not a lot of these recommendations like they use in animal husbandry. It's based on either total weight, in this case, humans, lean mass, because we don't necessarily want to feed the fat, and there's very little water in a fat cell anyway, maybe 12%. Muscle cells are 72 to 75% water. The brain, the organs, it's mostly water. We're mostly hairy bags of water, as Dr. Michael Colgan says, right? Hairy bags of salty water.
That was actually in a Star Trek show at one point, I believe.
Yes, exactly. Yes.
Keep going.
Yeah. So water. Now, most people, now I met and worked with Dr. Abram Hoffer in Victoria.
Amazing
Now,
guy, father of orthomolecular psychiatry,
absolutely.
right? To treating advanced states of mental illness with nutrition, and people freaked on this guy when he came out with that technology.
Which is always a good sign. When
Yes.
the conventional world calls you a quack, you're usually one of the most reliable people when it comes to the truth and real knowledge.
Dr. Pollack just said that by his proof of the 4 phases of water in his book, Cells, Gels, and the Engines of Life. He says, yeah, that's one of the problems with science, is you're always challenging the guys who are deciding whether you created something. It's challenging what they thought they knew.
Yeah, here's another tip for people. Don't worry what the academics think, because they don't live the life. They'll criticize and chop you up with an axe, but they don't live the life.
Right.
People in the field, the paupers who ate the black bread and drank the water, they were the ones that the kings brought in for advice. Heal my son, not the idiots in the court. They didn't know anything about life and health. Okay? Just keep that in mind. Okay?
Right. So
because having a degree means nothing. That doesn't mean I don't respect the work and the talent, but it's more the man. Conduct and character are what I get off on. I don't care if you have a degree or don't, color of skin, what your sexual preference is. It's meaningless, and it's ridiculous to be even concerned about it. That is a brute way to think. Okay? Get more evolved. So water is critical, and what I was referring, my first wife, I've been married twice. I was married for 8 years, had 2 kids, but my first wife broke down, had a nervous breakdown more or less, and then she was schizophrenic. She was diagnosed by many different psychiatrists as manic depression ultimately. Okay, I took her to Dr. Hoffer on the island when I was living in Surrey.
Wow.
And he said, your wife does not have schizophrenia. She's got a brain allergy. She's allergic to milk, casein, and this is an ecto. She's undersupplied with nutrition, and she's also allergic to gluten and wheat. So what we did was we put her on a very strict diet, and he says niacin. I think we gave her 30 grams a day. She didn't flush when she took it. Essential fatty acids, primrose oil, vitamin B6, and zinc, very important for brain. I would later learn from Dr. Carl Pfeiffer in New York, the Brain Bio Institute, how they were treating patients, in non-conventional ways, orthomolecular, chemistry, never mind the status quo, what works. So then Tracy and I ended up owning a gym, my second wife, Tracy, Spartacus, which was great, 5 years. And then we sold that and we moved to Victoria. I worked as a consultant at the vitamin shop, and guess who lives in Victoria? Dr. Hoffer. I ended up meeting him for lunch once a week at this men's club. And him and I and Dr. Campbell, who introduced hair analysis into Canada.
Wow.
He basically was an agricultural scientist. It was an amazing experience. The stories, the insight, it was absolutely wonderful. So, and then eventually I also met Dr. Pauling before he passed away. So I was very fortunate to meet a lot of the great pioneers. They're all gone now. They've all passed away. Many of them set a mark. They pioneered thoughts and ideas. So anyway, Hoffer said, Cory, here's what I have learned in 50 years of medicine. Most people suffer with dementia who have it because their brain is dehydrated. They simply, over the course of their lifetime, have not been drinking enough water and consuming coffee and dry food like a muffin or pita bread or bread, and then you look at their diet. There's nothing living, nothing high water volume. This is the way most people eat pizza, right? So their body, and you can't feel it consciously. Eventually you lose touch when you're not well. This is what's great about being an athlete. Is that you have a sensitivity about your existence that no one else can even relate to, because you can feel yourself working out, and movement brings attention. You bend over and do a sit-up. You can feel that fat gut. Otherwise, if you never ever do that, you'd never even be aware of it. And you can cover it all up with clothing. This is where the element of fashion comes in. You know how many women in particular cover up a physique that is god awful, but they focus on the exterior paint instead of the engine inside. And people use this. The clothes don't make the man. It's the man inside. You see? So you can use clothing and fashion and fancy clothes as you get older, and everyone will applaud you and give you attention without even being aware at all of what's underneath. See, that's where the real action is when it comes to health and wellness. And if you drink water regularly and routinely and it's clean, okay, you can avoid infection and degenerative disease. It's that simple. It's that, because the solution to pollution is dilution.
And now for a BiOptimizers fixed digestion tip. Supercharge your protein shake. Everyone knows protein shakes are a great way to sneak in extra protein, build more muscle, even replace meals and burn more fat. The problem is the highest quality protein typically absorbs at around 40%. One way to fix this and dramatically increase how quickly and effective your protein shake digests is to add 2 to 3 capsules of masszymes into your shake. One research study showed that pre-digested protein during a meal increased muscle growth significantly. To take advantage of this, just blend the open capsules into your shake, and within 15 minutes or less, the enzymes will have begun to break down the protein into amino acids. This can make your shakes at least 2 to 3 times more potent. Some people do this and sip on their shake while lifting to provide their muscles with a steady stream of amino acids during their workout. To save 10% on masszymes, use the code SHAKE10, that's SHAKE10, at masszymes.com. That's SHAKE10 at masszymes.com. Air, water.
What's the next one?
Water-rich foods.
Right. So food. Okay. Real, whole food. Natural food. Food that is intact.
So what would you call natural food, just to clearly define that versus unnatural? At what level of processing do you feel that we crossed the line? What's that point?
Well, that's a great question, because if you remove the elements like the flavonoids or the isoflavones or the abstract elements that are not defined as vitamins, which are critical, and they should all be defined better. But when you study vitamins and minerals, you learn about the essential vitamins like vitamin E and vitamin C. But when it gets into some of these other players, and there's like 500 flavonoids, there are, or carotenoids rather, 500 carotenoids, which are fat soluble. There are 10,000 flavonoids that play a role in gene expression. And these were all part of the original diet that led to the expression of a healthy human being. You remove those and end up eating malnutritive, dead, sterile food. You're not activating immune responses. And now we're getting into a plague of autoimmune conditions. I think it's that simple. Our whole gene pool is being corrupted by how we live today. Okay. So, it's just simple. I'm a mixed eater. In biology, there's not one university on the planet that teaches that humans are vegetarians. Okay, in biology, we're omnivores. Now, because we have brains that can reason, and because we live in different ways today than we used to, we can eat a whole variety of foods. People, have the choice, and sometimes it's too excessive. Gluttony, is often related to having an excess amount of too much stuff to choose from. The simplest people, remember that Hawking's simplicity and elegance. These healthy people that I've encountered that live in coastal, huts and they have a very simple plain diet. Like these Fijian fishermen that I hung out with and went fishing with, his basic diet was fish from the sea and a sort of a breadfruit and fresh fruit. And that's pretty much it. So how does a man sustain himself on such a simple diet? Well, the quality of that food is so outstanding and rich. Grown in fertile soil, in a perfect environment or near perfect environment. I've always thought that the Garden of Eden has got to be sunny and warm and an environment where you can walk around, half naked. because although men migrated for various reasons all over the planet, I don't think the ideal place to live is a freezing cold place. And you see a lot of sickness and illness because people are forced to go inside and turn up the furnace and breathe this conditioned air, which dries them out. So when I say whole food, I mean plants and animals, real. Now I'll give you an example of our diet. Okay, I use bison.
What did you do for? Let's just say what's your diet today? What did you eat today?
Okay, so before I have this salad that I make every day. It's got about 12 different raw vegetables. Okay, so it's got celery and
is that something every day? A big salad?
Yeah, well, that's my first big salad because I have 2 big salads every day.
Two big salads per day.
Yeah, the first salad is made up of chopped raw vegetables, about a dozen of them, and rainbow salad with many, many colors. There's flavonoids, lutein, you know the story, right? Okay, Now in that salad, I always add a protein, usually like a chicken breast. Okay, I buy chicken breasts and I cook them all at once, and then I access them throughout several days, and that goes into that salad. Not a lot. I don't eat a lot of protein, and not as much as I used to. One of the things that I have a couple of 100 grams a day, but not at one time. My meal size is relatively small. Okay, so I eat maybe 5, 6, 7 times a day. They're relatively small. We know with this data now, time-restricted eating, time-restricted feeding, that if you start eating at a certain time, say it's 8 in the morning, it's best to shut down at 8 at night, maximum 12 hours. The rodent studies are very clear. If you feed these rodents junk food, but keep them restricted in a cycle that's similar to the circadian patterns of the solar cycle of light and night, they can withstand more stress and have less health problems as opposed to the ad libitum diets, which you allow the mice to eat any time throughout a 12-hour period. And even if you feed them the best quality food, they can't meet the standards of health of the junk food rats who are restricted in time. But the very best outcome is the best diet with time restriction. Now, I learned this from Rolla, 40 years ago. Cory, you shut down at 6. You do not eat food after dinner. You have to allow your body to digest and process. And if you do that, you'll have, nice, stable blood sugar when you go to bed, and you'll sleep well. But eating late at night has become a standard in our culture. And it's one of the worst things now that you can do. Now, this is how I was taught by my naturopathic teachers. Do not eat at night. Now, there are exceptions, obviously. And if you're going to eat, make sure it's nice, clean, wholesome food. I like protein at every meal because it helps stabilize my appetite and my blood sugar. And I'm an athlete. I'm very, very active. I need that nitrogen. I need a positive nitrogen balance so that I don't lose muscle as I age, which is called sarcopenia. So I don't want to lose functional muscle because muscle is the health engine. And muscle is now seen as an endocrine gland that speaks to genetically every other organ in the body, including the brain. It's not just the brain that controls all the organs and tissue. It's the tissue and the organs that work with the brain as a system. It's called systems biology. This is one of the main principles in functional medicine.
And there's some evidence that they serve as some form of electrical generator for our organs. I've heard that theory. Have you heard about that?
Totally. Yeah, well, body electric, right?
Right, exactly.
Yeah. So obviously there's an electrical current of some kind going through us. I mean, that's what the difference is between me alive and me dead. 1 millisecond after I'm dead, what happened to that electrical charge? That's what the big controversy is all about. What is that thing inside of us?
What is the ghost inside the machine?
Yes, exactly. And if you study consciousness, they still haven't figured that out. It's all very interesting. But like I said, when you don't know, just relax in the fact that you don't know. Instead of hanging your hat on a hook, that doesn't make any sense. And also, I learned from Thomas Paine, which made perfect sense to me. This is the guy that criticized the divine rights of the king and left England and came to America and helped the founders write the Constitution. He was an atheist, and he said, look, there's nothing up there. It's all ridiculous. But Cory, I read his book. He's the guy that coined the term common sense and wrote the book called Common Sense.
Amazing.
Okay. He said, I bet you anything, Cory, that your religion, because I was raised religious, that your religion is secondhand. And that just hit me like a brick. He says, here's why I'm telling you it's secondhand. Have you seen God, Cory? Have you seen an angel? Have you seen any of this stuff that everyone around you says exists? And the answer to that was no, I've never seen it. And then he went further. If you have seen it, it's probably because you were hallucinating or your mind was playing tricks on you, because that's what the mind does. And then we end up having some kind of superstitious-like experience that we can't explain because we don't use our brain as a mathematician and we don't understand the capacity of coincidence, that it can all be calculated using a computer. So you get a premonition, so-called, and somebody comes into your mind. And then sure enough, a couple days later, they phone you and you go, oh, that's why I know that there's some kind of divine presence. Absolutely not. You can calculate all of this because you know that person exists and that person's in your life, and it's just a matter of time before that person were to call you. So I can't tell you how many people base their entire position of life on coincidence, or they say it was meant to happen. Well, what was meant to happen? How do you know it was meant to happen? These are the questions I've always asked, Wade. How do you know this? And what I love about Socrates, and he was put to death because he was a disturber. He went up to people on the street and said, you think justice is a good thing? And they'd say, yeah. And so what is justice? Oh, they couldn't answer the question. They didn't even know what it was, but they thought it was good. He was trying to pinpoint and focus on the fact that most people have no idea about what they think about, that it's not even their own thought life, that it's a sort of a hodgepodge collection of whatever's going around, and they're more concerned about what people think than their own thoughts. Well, I was never like that. I was always thinking outside the box and always challenging everything and always getting in trouble because I could never sit still in class, or I was always doing other things I wasn't supposed to do. Sound familiar?
Yeah. That's one hell of a chopped salad you had this morning.
Okay, so I got broccoli in there. I got feta cheese. I got feta cheese from goats.
Uh-huh.
Okay, there's a whole history in literature about feta cheese and goat milk. Okay, and I'm a blood type B, so I do very well with dairy, but I prefer only to consume grass-fed dairy that is raw. And there's not a lot of that going around these days.
No,
so
they're trying to outlaw it everywhere. I mean,
exactly. So the exception I make,
rolling over in his grave on that one.
Exactly. The exception I have with the dairy is feta because it has been changed through fermentation. It's like yogurt, okay? And when you ferment dairy products and goat milk on a molecular level is more like human milk. And compatibility is what this trip is all about. So I say to people, what is your relationship like with food? It's like, what is your relationship like with your mom or your girlfriend? Are you guys compatible? Because if you're not, it's only a matter of time before you're going to go your separate ways. And all of the grief, all of the suffering, all of the issues that you have with your parents or your friends or your wife or whatever is because of incompatibility issues. How to raise the kids, religion, what's right and wrong, okay? You're not going to break up because everything that you believe in is the same. Otherwise, you'd never split. So, and it's also about coming to terms with the differences and yet still respecting the individual because they're not great enough to cause you to split. Because really, a lot of the issues that we have with people don't really matter when it comes down to it. Who cares? You want to cut your hair? You want to grow it long? Who cares? It's your hair. Who am I to tell you how to dress, or if you want to put a ring through your nose? It's your body. It's your life. I've always wanted that from people. So one of my big issues all through my life, Wade, was if you won't give me the opportunity to be myself, then you're not my friend. You're not my friend. If you don't accept me, because I will never hurt you. You can count on me. I'm incredibly loyal. I'll dig down deep and go, to the end of time to support a person that I know who I love. I'll help them. But if you betray me, if you try and change me because you don't agree with something that I think is right or great, and it doesn't matter really fundamentally. Like it would be like I was gay and you're my father and you disown me because I'm gay. You're more concerned about yourself and being true to a ridiculous concept than actually accepting me as your son who's desperately wanting to love you and be loved by you. And you can't even see that. And yet I'll then find another man in my life because I didn't choose my parents. And this is the great lesson that we learn. You don't choose your parents and they don't choose you. They spawn you. You know, one ejaculation has 500 million sperm and every one of them are different. They're not all clones of each other. Every one of them are different. And so which one is going to get to that egg? It's impossible to even fathom. And
the guy that ate the chopped salad in the morning.
You know, so you're spawned out into the world. You have really nothing to do with it. And then here you are. You're sort of stuck. You know, Ayn Rand said, if you were a space traveler and you crash landed on a planet, the first thing that you'd say when you woke up, if you were unconscious, was not who am I? You'd say, where am I? Where am I? What are the rules of the game? Can I go outside the spaceship? Is there an oxygen atmosphere out here that I can breathe? This is what people don't consider. They're too focused on who am I and being lost in themselves when it's absolutely obvious who you are. You're the thing standing in front of the mirror. That's who you are. So understand who and what you are. It all ties in. When I wake up in the morning, it's a glass of water. Okay, then I get the juicer out and I alternate. It's citrus juice. It is orange, grapefruit, lemon, and lime one day. And in a glass of juice that I make for Trace and I, it's a big tablespoon of ascorbic acid. It's calcium ascorbate, vitamin C mixed with calcium. We take on the average of maybe 15 to 18 grams of vitamin C per day. This is what I learned from Pauling. Right. We're all hyposcorbutic. And vitamin C goes so far beyond scurvy. It goes into solidifying the collagen bed that makes us real and alive. And every athlete needs so much more vitamin C than what we've been led to believe.
Would you say that's a solid, sorry to interrupt, but this is powerful stuff that might be surprising to people.
Yes.
15 to 18 grams. What would you say for someone that hasn't had vitamin C throughout their whole life? What would you do on that one? How would you
start off with maybe 500 to 1,000 milligrams? Mm-hmm. Then do that for a week. The next week go to 2,000, and ultimately, as most of the orthomolecular functional medicine doctors agree that at least 3 grams, 3,000 milligrams in divided doses to keep the white blood cells, the leukocytes saturated, to keep the eye saturated. You know, get that sore eye feeling. That's a clear example of vitamin C deficiency. Adrenal exhaustion, vitamin C, because there's a huge amount of C stored in the adrenals. Mm-hmm. Allergies, resistance to stress. The whole stress model that I learned from Dr. Hoffer, the production of adrenochrome from adrenaline under stress. Humans cannot produce vitamin C, and under stress, we convert glucose into cholesterol, and it gets oxidized, and it clots the blood. And if you take a lot of niacin and vitamin C, it will not happen. This is why animals don't get cancer, by Dr. Matthias Rath in Germany. He proved it. It's well known. You see, a goat makes vitamin C. And when you stress that animal out in research studies, it quadruples. It elevates vitamin C to protect itself from the stress hormones that are produced inside its body. Humans can't do it. So that, to me, is a strategy for life that I've been doing for a long time, and so does Tracy. That goes in the juice. Now, the next day, I'll do a carrot and parsley, because chlorophyll is absolutely monumental to health and wellness. It's got a beautiful source of magnesium. It's a strong alkaline oxygen supplier. And it's like, I just bought some organic parsley today. It's like 39 cents for a big loaf. And when's the last time that the average person takes in a great big bundle of parsley? And you know how you can do that with juicing. Remember the juice man, Jack LaLanne, who I met and knew? Okay, this is how you get it in. So I get these great big organic carrots, and then I put cucumber in, I get celery. I put, and you know, the anti-inflammatory virtue of ginger and curcumin from these roots that go into the juicer, and I juice those. Because inflammation is the seed of cancer and heart disease and diabetes. It's well known, well documented, well proven. Silent inflammation. You can't feel it consciously. It's not like being hit like in hockey. Oh, ouch, that hurts. You get inflammation. We're talking about a systemic inflammation that happens. It all is connected with insulin, with hormones and neurotransmitters, and the consumption of illegitimate food for long periods of time. So I alternate the juice. So after the juice, wait a little while, and then we're going to get into the protein shake. Okay. So then
how long would be a while? Would you say that you wait?
Oh, maybe an hour.
Okay.
So I do the water, then the juice, and then the water. And then with the juice, I take tyrosine for the thyroid. Tyrosine is called the anti-stress amino acid. I take coenzyme Q10 to charge the electron transport chain. This is something that degrades. One of the things I learned from Dr. Pauling, who's 2 Nobel Prizes, right? Chemistry and peace. Yep. Peace is more significant to me than anything. Okay. But chemistry, man, the guy was brilliant. He said, Cory, as you age, you're not going to be able to produce the elements, the nutrients, the neurotransmitters, and the hormones that you did when you were 18. And this is the great thing, the remarkable thing about dietary supplements and science. Like astronauts in space, it's a hostile environment. They utilize vitamins and minerals. They invented protein shakes and the sports bar. NASA invented them originally, okay? These people, what did they eat in space? They didn't have, easy bake ovens out there. They ate out of tubes. This is how they discovered much about the amino acids and fatty acids and all the research. So I make my shake. The shake's I use a whey protein isolate. It's unflavored and unsweetened in water. And then I use the organic berries, and we chop up pineapple and mango and kiwi. We chop it up ourselves and freeze it. So that goes in the shake. I like a nice creamy, ice cold shake. In addition, I add ribose, a teaspoon. I use creatine after training because 50% absorption as opposed to before training, enhanced. It's better to absorb it after. So I take a little shaker after I train. So that doesn't go in the morning shake, but I also put glutamine in there, and then I put some spirulina from Hawaii. Okay? Mm-hmm. And then I squirt about maybe 4 to 6 tablespoons of hemp seed oil.
That's great.
Because hemp seed oil has got that, that omega-3 parent. It's also got the GLA, gamma linolenic acid. It's just ideal for reducing inflammation. So what I'm doing through the diet and through the consumption of food is trying to do my best to minimize and subdue inflammation, which is a byproduct of athletic training. People are wondering, why am I so sore? Why are my elbows sore? Why are my knees sore when I squat? Well, look at your diet, man. Look at your diet. Your diet is an inflammatory diet, right? It's so simple. This is why a CSNA is taught to analyze diet. You don't ask people anything except the 4 words. What do you eat?
Yeah, that's a great question, right? What do you eat?
And then after that, what's eating you? Because then you get into the psychology.
Right.
I can give you the perfect diet. I can detail you to the nth degree. Take you through a workout. This is if you do this, I guarantee you're going to experience incredible health. But if you don't do it, Wade, if you're not motivated for the right reason, this is why philosophy comes ahead of the math and the science. And this is why originally philosophers were the scientists. And then they mixed the two. You were a philosopher and a scientist, and now we've lost touch with philosophy. Mm-hmm. What it is we're doing and why. That's the question. What is it you're doing and why? Are you working for the man? Are you a slave? Or are you free? Are you a free agent that has gained and found control of your life, and you call the shots? You see, that's the kind of life that I'm attracted to.
I love it. So speaking of the shots, we've just loaded up 4 to 6 tablespoons of hemp
in the shake.
In the shake. So we've hydrated. We've done the juices. We've added some very specific nutritional supplements for very
and I take a handful
reasons.
And with the shake, it's called shake and take. Tracy came up with that. You make the shake. Okay, now people need something to swallow their vitamins with. What a better time than to swallow it down with a nice, creamy, ice cold shake that you like. You make it. You make the one that you love. And I love my shake. So does Tracy. Just can't wait to get a shake, man. I raised all the grandkids on them.
Totally.
Yeah, raised all the kids on them. My kids were not even out of their diapers and having protein shakes. Okay?
That's great. That's great.
And they still do. They still make the shakes. So they buy all the materials.
So then what happens? So what time of the? So we started at what time did this whole thing start?
I'm usually up at 6 or 7. So that's when I also make a coffee. We use organic beans that I grind myself, and a very, very strong coffee. It's called cowboy coffee. I have 1 cup of coffee a day, and I kid you not that I've yet to meet anyone that can withstand the potency of our coffee. If you've been to Greece and you know what a Greek coffee is, the spoon it'll stand up straight. That's how thick they're.
You and I have been to Greece together, so.
Oh, that's right. That's right. Okay, so when and then everyone puts all that sugar in there. I take it, and when I order that Greek coffee in Greece, they say, "Oh, what are you crazy? You nuts? You don't want any sugar?" No, I don't want any sugar. I want that shot, that blast. Mm-hmm. Okay. So, and there's no evidence that if you're well hydrated and feeding on natural foods, that coffee has any illegitimate effect. It's very well received by the human body. Of course, there are exceptions, but I'm down to just 1 cup a day. That's it. And I like to get that charge, that mental stimulation. And I think the key with coffee is to make sure that you're well hydrated and to make sure it's clean, because you don't want the pesticides and all the residues. Yep. So I do the water, then the juice, then the coffee, and then I'm getting ready to go to the gym. So I have my pre-workout shake, wait about an hour, I walk to the gym or the field and train. Okay. Now at the gym, I have a shaker cup, and that's got the creatine and more whey protein isolate, more glutamine, more ribose to replete. So the pre-workout sets me up for blood sugar stability, power and strength to draw from. I'm not going to train on empty, but I'm also an endo, so I don't need a lot of calories. And of course, we know in biochemistry, humans don't need carbohydrates. They can be useful and beneficial, but humans have no essential biochemical need for carbohydrates. We're hunters. We can actually live on protein and fat alone and never ever eat a carbohydrate, and we won't die of a carbohydrate deficiency. So keeping that in mind, I think that's important to keep in mind when you put your diet together, because a diet that is typically high in refined carbohydrates is going to get you in trouble. And we know that's what's been getting people into trouble for 100 years. Mm-hmm. The white flour, the sugar, and everything else that goes along with it. Okay. Now in the gym, I'm also hydrating, okay, with an electrolyte or maybe some coconut water, right? So I have my post-workout there, come home, and now I'm going to have my next meal, okay? That's usually going to be that chopped up vegetable thing with the protein in it, okay? And I use virgin olive oil, and I use balsamic vinegar. I never eat store-bought dressings. I'll tell you this too. I went out, because when we were traveling, we had no choice. Now, we did stop at supermarkets, and I would buy a tin of tuna and go hiking with that kind of thing. But I went out in the 5 days I was with my son. I went out more times than I have in the last 3 years. I never, ever go out to eat. I buy everything myself and make it at home. Okay. And I think that going out a lot to eat is really a destructive process because of what the restaurants put in the food. Now you can be very selective. And I always am when I go out. I get a big salad and greens, and I had some great food down there. But there's just things going on in the kitchen that you don't see. And restaurants are into profit. They don't, like if you order an olive oil, it's not extra virgin. It's not the highest quality from Crete, right? It's going to be usually some, refined stuff. So I usually get a lemon and just squirt that on, So you do your best. But I think that's one of the mistakes. Plus, you can spend a huge amount of revenue going out. And if you actually add it up, it's surprising. 80% of the people don't pay attention to what they spend money on. They don't even have a budget. 80% of people do not have a budget. So you break this down and say, you know how much money you actually spend a month on going out for dinner? $800. $1,200, and you're bitching about not having enough money. And plus, you're not getting the very best that you could get. I think the relationship that I have with food is very important to me. I go to the market, I select it, I pick it up, I look at it, I choose it, I take it home, I wash it. I spend time. And this is the thing that I'm very much appreciative of these days, is that I have a lot of downtime. I don't live in a hurry. You know, it was Paracelsus that said that the reason we are ill is because we are never still. And I like nature, man. There's some beautiful, like Cow Lake here, and I go fishing. I will stand on a rock with my feet up to my knees in Cow Lake in the summertime, and I will cast. I don't care if I catch anything. I usually do. I'll cast for hours, and I will just receive the magnitude, the blessing, the joy. It's just taking the time to pay attention to the small things. This is what I do with my grandkids. We'll stop and they'll look at a ladybug on a leaf. Now, when's the last time anybody stopped in their life to look at a blade of grass? This is what little kids do. They're curious.
It's fascinating, actually. If you really take the time.
It brings your adrenaline down.
Mm-hmm.
It calms you down. There's a huge amount of anxiety and depression in our society. And all you have to do is look at the way the person lives. Do they train? Do they run? Do they swim? Do they cycle on a regular basis, almost every day? You know, how much time do you really need to train? An hour if you do it right and well. Now, I've worked on farms in New Zealand, in Africa, South America, in Asia. I've worked on farms as a hand, as a ranch hand, or in New Zealand on a sheep farm. These farmers work every single day. They do not take any holidays. There's no holidays on a farm. There's no holidays. You never get a holiday. There's no Christmas. There's no holiday. But they produce everything and they eat everything, and it's marvelous. It's an incredible way. This is our origin too. Before, after the hunting gathering age ended, the agrarian age began about 10,000, 15,000 years ago. So the farming begins. Okay, now that's labor intensive and you're connected to the land still. But thinking of your training, everyone's, what's the minimum time that I have to train? Well, that's the wrong question, buddy. I'm sorry. Next, please. Okay, if you're asking me that question, you're never going to make it. Why not ask, what's the maximum amount of time I can train, Cory? What's the maximum? Well, I'd say let's go to the gym and then let's play tennis at lunch and then let's go for a swim at nighttime. Let's train 3 days a week doing some physical activity. Because that is our heritage. That is where we came from, and that's what we're designed to do. And if you do that, you won't believe the charge, the electricity, the vitality that you create in your body, which then flows up into your brain.
Absolutely, and you're a living example of that. Just to circle around, because we're coming close to the end, was there anything else dietary-wise in your daily? Because you've got a lot of movement put in there. You've got a lot of food for thought. Obviously, you study a lot, but any other things on the food side of things?
In the evening, I usually have, these are my choices of protein: bison, wild salmon, wild fish never farmed. So halibut is on that menu. I usually eat a tin of sardines every day. Okay, There's my Scottish heritage, the essential fatty acids. When do people eat entrails these days? Tracy eats liver once a week. Entrails are one of the secrets to longevity and health. Nobody eats it anymore. They even think of it as gross. The average kid that's 3 or 4 or 5 has never eaten an entrail or an organ in their life and probably never will. That's where the action is in the body of an animal. That's where all the vitamins and the minerals, the enzymes are stored in the entrails. That's what all the carnivores go for. They leave carcasses behind, let the buzzards pick at the muscle meat. Okay? So that's how I get some entrails, by eating a can of sardines. It's very clean. I'll take that hiking. There's no carbs in it. And I'll have the energy. You wouldn't believe it. Because the protein changes the brain and stimulates thermogenesis in a way that carbohydrates don't. And it supplies so much of what we need to build the body out of. So I always have some really high quality protein. And then I have a green leafy salad, a magnesium salad with pumpkin seeds, again, the oils, the natural oils, and onions. And I eat garlic almost routinely every day, raw garlic, lots of garlic. That's 1,000 times better than aspirin for prevention of clotting in the blood. And garlic is enormously powerful for the prevention of cancer, tumor formation. Simple things, but it's well known. And then I usually fast after the evening meal and have herbal teas and just drink water. And then that's it. So the vitamins go with the shakes. There's a well thought out vitamin plan. A, retinol, and then beta carotene and the carotenoids. B complex, C and D and E and the minerals. And then there's specialty items that play a big role too, like CoQ10 or lipoic acid. These are all the things that you can play around with and use the research to motivate you to take. But the goal is to stay well, to be functional, and then to go for whatever it is you want to go for, to create an empire, build a family, travel, but never compromise, like Howard Rourke. Never compromise your health. Never sell it, never give it away, never trade it in, ever. And that is my secret to longevity and health and the wisdom of the age.
So, man, we'll definitely come back for a number 2 on this, because there's so many questions that I have, and how you've been able to come to these conclusions and have such clarity around them, and to have developed it in some of the stories and the people that you met are truly amazing. And of course, was one of the inspirational reasons why I chose to study at the Cory Holly Institute, the Chi Institute. Can you just share with the listener about what you do at the Institute? What's it all about? And basically, this is your mission in life, I guess, is to kind of educate a virtual, peaceful army of people who understand what they need to do to have this amazing thing to have called health, so that they can do the other things that they were meant to do.
It's a default mechanism. I think that the system itself, the education system, is not doing its real job. And so when I started to design health products for the Canadian health food industry, I realized that the retailers, because they have no minimum level, none of education, zero. There's no minimum requirement for education to work in a health food store. Even the personal trainers have to be certified and take courses and then have them renewed to get credits, but not so in the health industry. And yet, look how complicated some of these products are. You start studying botanical medicine, homeopathy, antioxidants, free radicals. Hello, and you're saying that there's no minimum standard. So I wrote the course for the industry. That's why I wrote it. I realized that they needed something to understand what sports nutrition was. And sports nutrition is just not for athletes playing sports. It's for the man, the woman of the age who's engaged in the sport of life, who needs to be active and needs to eat clean. So there's a whole lot that goes into that. Because you're a graduate, Wade, you know what it involves. There's philosophy, motivation. There is the fundamental element of physics and biochemistry and biology in the course material. We've got to understand what the rules of the game are. Like when I throw the hammer, there are very specific rules that are detailed in rule books. Did you know that 95% of athletes don't even read the rule book in their own sport? They just pick it up as they go along, but they've never actually got a rule book and read it from cover to cover. They rely on the officials rather than reading about the game. So the Institute, the idea, and I never meant to do this because I was working as a consultant and formulating, and I never knew that I would eventually evolve into this because I wasn't truly free yet. I was still dependent on a big corporation, and it was good. And I got a lot of travel, and I was writing for magazines and all this kind of stuff, meeting people. I got a lot of recognition traveling from coast to coast down in the States and in Europe. And that really helped the courses, because people knew my name by, reading the Alive magazine or Vista column, right? And me doing all these seminars and the retailers. So I wrote it for them. The CHFA originally helped me distribute it, but they weren't interested in the fitness industry. And I said, are you crazy? The fitness industry is as big as the health food industry. It's even bigger in some ways, okay? And guess what? I predicted this 20 years ago. They're going to steal sports nutrition from you. Because at that time, 20 years ago, Wade, not one gym sold any vitamins. And now every single gym you go into has a vitamin kiosk. Or at least they do here. Sure. And all the ones that you go into them, they're all selling supplements, vitamins, protein powders, right? And that used to be the exclusive domain of the health food industry. They didn't wise up. They didn't take my advice. So then I said, screw it. I am going to create my institute. I incorporated myself. I asked Dr. Colgan, my mentor and friend, what should I call? He says, use your name, Cory. Use your name. So I applied, and they rejected it. They said, you can't use your name to name an institute. And then I hired a lawyer and said, yes, we can. So there again, I didn't give up. Persistence is the key. I eventually got that through. I federally incorporated it internationally. And so that was very useful because having the corporation allows me to be a consultant. The same with Tracy. And it gives us all kinds of tax breaks, etc. Having a corporation that is the owner and the distributor of the CSNA education program worldwide, because we're in 30 countries and we're just now enrolling over 8,000 now. My goal before the end of this decade is to get 10,000. Okay?
That's incredible.
And I do no advertising, none. I never have. I don't solicit. I don't knock on doors. All I do is just wait for people to come, and they've usually heard something good about the integrity of the course material, and that's all I want, because I'm not motivated by money, Wade. I'm motivated by cause, and I'm motivated by health, and I don't want anyone involved in my life with this course material who isn't truly committed to the same premise. And it's not that I condemn you if you're not. It's just that I'd rather just have people that understand what it's going to take to get through the material. And I will do what I can to get you through it.
Beautifully said. Cory Holly with the Chi Institute. I'm a graduate. I encourage everyone here to check it out. We're going to have that in the show notes today so that you can get in contact with Cory. And let me tell you, I've seen a lot of courses. I've seen a lot of people, and I've met a lot of educators. You'll never find someone that is more passionate, better studied, or that lives the principles outlined in the course better than you do, Cory. And it's a real testament to have you here on the show. I was so excited about this interview. I know we're going to have you back again because there was, like I said, I think we opened up more doors than we started with, and that's always the way it is when we chat. So thank you so much for joining us on the show today. For all those who want to get involved with the Cory Holly Institute, I can't recommend it enough. Please check the show notes. We'll get there. You can reach out to Cory. They can reach you. How do they reach you, Cory?
Just go to my site, CoryHolly.com. Mm-hmm. We were traveling in the RV, and we came up with this motto. We saw it on this movie theater. Go big, go strong. So Tracy said, there it is. Go big, go strong. Go CoryHolly.com.
I love it. That's great. Perfect. That's so true. And so thank you so much. And we'll call that a wrap for today. And we'll bring you back to the show really soon because there's a bunch of areas that I want to dive deep later on.
Absolutely awesome, Wade. Thank you so much.
And now for a BiOptimizers fixed digestion tip. How to get away with eating sugar. Hey, look, sugar is normally one of the worst things for you. But let's be honest. I mean, we all cheat from time to time. And here's a little trick that will ensure your body benefits from the sugar. Now, before you eat or drink anything sweet, take 5 to 8 capsules of P3OM. The patented strain in the formula devours sugar so fast it literally doubles in the body every 20 minutes in the presence of sugar. That doesn't mean that you can or you should eat a bunch of sugar or sit around all day doing that. But on the days that you do cheat or you go after one of those maybe meals that you wouldn't normally do, this ensures that you get something in your gut that eats the sugar. And it's not going to feed the bad guys or spike your blood glucose nearly as much. So to learn more about P3OM and its sugar-devouring and protein-digesting properties and how it can transform your gut and metabolism, go to www.bioptimizers.com.
Thank you for listening to the BiOptimizers Awesome Health Podcast. You can find more information at bioptimizers.com.